It's really interesting how when you have already primed the figure, you can see all the light rebounding the side of the face, the sides of the breasts, and this knowledge is slowly going inside your brain. You are taking decisions now, future visions of your decisions. For example, the light that's coming from the right. We will paint this idea in the final phase. This is why this step is so important. Inspiration can come from anywhere. Illustrations, photographs, Instagram. We all have been in a film looking at the reflections of the jacket, at the facial features of the faces, the sources of light to be inspired and do it at home in your busts. And being an observer person, for me this is the clue here. You have to learn how to observe nature and real life, how to observe all the light rebounding, the sources of light, the cast shadow, the textures of the elements, the wet in our faces, asking yourself a lot of questions. And this is the path to become a great artist, to learn how to observe. In this case, we have the excellent example of the Judith Smith illustrations. We have here two options. We follow it or we do our own version. In my case, I wanted to do an interpretation of this Judith Smith illustration, but in my own style, getting, for example, a few more sources of light affecting, for example, the side of the face, the side of the breasts, the side of the ass a bit, and change a bit the color. This was an idea that Matti, the owner of Rubber Rocket, liked, and we follow it. So the next step here is to print this illustration and put it in front of your desk and try to understand it and try to copy it the best you can. We come back to our prime figure and we have all the ideas placed in the table. Here I'm playing a bit with the light that reflects my palm. You see in the side of the face, really interesting. So with these ideas, we want to copy the illustration. We have new ideas here. Let's get the white from Liquitex and start sketching a bit the light. I mix it with the thinner. My own thinner is a mix with glaze and ultramatte varnish from AK. You can use your normal thinner. We place little dots of this thinner with the white because this adds like thickness to the white and prevents these little dots spreading out. By the way, this is for me the best white because it barely spread out dots. So I start, look at the position of the airbrush. I start really close because I want to create the volumes. I use the sculpt to guide me, but I want to control it. I want to be part of this process. And I stop in the areas that for me needs more volume, like in one side of the face. And look how I let in the sides of the face, like in the right and in the left, a black line, a black silhouette. This is a mainly thing I will explain later in the video. If you get a dot, you get a clean brush and start rubbing it out until you get it out. As you notice, I decided to give a zenithal light coming a bit from the left, but a secondary light, this one, coming from the right. This here is the mainly thing that's different from other projects. In other projects, if you know my other figures, you will notice I use strong secondary lights, really strong. In this case, I wanted to yet sketch this light really strong, but then in the finished product, this light will be really subtle. I wanted to learn how to do a feminine face, but being not so aggressive, like Justin Florentino's illustrations. Look how incredible, how smooth, how feminine he uses the tones and he uses the facial features here. This is the mainly thing I want you to see. Look at, for example, the jaw of the girl has a little touch, a little hint of green. Look at the shadows that have a little touch of gray. This is a lot of ideas I had in my brain and get inspired from Justin. And precisely this really smooth and soft interpretation of art was a challenge for me because I'm not used to do it. In this video, I learned how to do it in a way that I was impossible for me, and I will teach you how to give strokes, but really subtle. Talking about this stroke, with how I placed the light in the middle left side of the breasts, letting in the bottom and in the sides a shadow line, shadow silhouette. This is really important to add a comic, an illustration, and a realistic style of painting. Look how it changed an old figure done by me. This is not a bad interpretation. I like the skins, I like the shines, but look at the edges of all the muscles, the sides of all the project. Now compared to this one, all the work in the silhouettes represent a more realistic looking, a more interesting and dramatic looking. That's why we are letting in the sides of all the muscles a line in dark. And when you have it in your brain, the process, this is always the same. You can play with light. Look at the belly. Look at the silhouette I'm playing out with a highlight. We have these two ideas and we join it. This is letting a dark line, a dark silhouette representing volume, and now a white silhouette that with a black background you can see it very well because it's obvious. There's a line in white that contrasts really well with the background. This is really helpful because when you do the pictures in the final steps, if you have a lot of white or highlight silhouettes, it's better to do it with black, with a black background. The same with the breasts. Look how it changed. Look how better they get with those lines, outlines. This adds volume to the projects. Also, in the back part, in the ass, we represent the secondary source of light, and we do the same that we did with the belly. We let in the middle of the two sources of light a black line, respecting again the muscles of that part of the body. This is, I always tell you this is a thing, a knowledge that Boris Vallejo teach me with his drawings. Now, in a few steps, you have this. A way to do it better is to get black, and we do the same, but we go over the shadows that not are so aggressive. We want more contrast, so we step in the middle of the max shadows, focusing in the sides of the elements, like in the arm. For example, you do a thin line dividing the two sources of light. Look how it changes now. Look how you in the arm affects like three sources of light. Like here in the ass, same, dividing the two lights. Now this frames all the figures. This creates like a roundish shape and type of aura that surrounds all the figure and represents a good knowledge of light and a more interesting light study in the figure. And before we finish this section, I want to show you, for me, one of the best little nuances, little details in the whole figure. I'm getting white and I'm representing a light, a rebounding of the light that's coming from the breasts and in the below the jaw. We add a little more of white, and this is a tiny detail that you barely see it in the final pictures, But when you hold it in your hand and you watch it closely, you can see that light that's affecting below the jaw and surrounds all the face, joins the secondary light that's coming from the right. These are little things, little silly things, but creates a complete and more realistic project. So keep in mind these little nuances. Practice not only adding shadows and light in the top or in the bottom of the objects. Play with the sides of them. Let's go for the color.